Guess who's back? Back again. X is back. Tell your friends. X is back. X is back. X is back. Dadum, doom, doom, dadum, doom, doom, dadum. All right, let me calm the fuck down. XInyaface.com. So spell it out. Let me spell it one more time. XINYAFACEDOTCOM. You spell the whole thing out. Rise and love, family. It is I, XInyaface.com, back at it again with another vlog style video / podcast. Is it? I'm not sure. Who knows? Let me get in my bag and talk about what I'm going to talk about, and then I will determine whether or not it gets posted to the podcast feed. But anyway, the thought or word of the day, right? Before I get to preaching or I get to hitting it, and somebody's like, man, he preaching, but they say it in a negative connotation or with a negative connotation. Reminder, this whole channel, when I said vlog at the top, this whole channel in terms of the podcast is me sharing my experience, my reflections on my life, things that I've learned and things that I'm trying to do to better my existence, my life as a parent, my life as a husband, as a friend, as a community member, etc. Right? So I hope by sharing that I'm making a positive impact and that I'm able to share in some experience of life with other people who are out there. But please do not take it as me trying to give you advice on what you should do in your life. Do what's best for you. Okay. So interestingly enough, the thought came to me about like relationship vloggers or relationship podcasters. Sometimes folks have stuff with their significant others, their wives, or they'll be on a platform and be talking about being in intimate relationships with, colleagues or things of that sort, right? And I was like, what makes some of those people qualified? Some of those folks are qualified because of their certifications or the education that they received, right? They went to school for psychology, they're marriage and family therapists, they're, psychiatrists, they're psychologists, they're doing something in the field of, right, relationships. They work in that. And so they have that professional experience or education or a combination of the two. And I think a lot of other people are speaking from the experience of being married and just speaking to what's worked for them. And I was thinking about this and I'm like, some of them actually talk about the struggles that they had and they're speaking of it in the past tense. And they say, when we had this struggle, this is how we got through it, right? And I thought, I had a thought recently where I was talking to my wife and I was like, everybody's talking about it like it's in the past tense. Wouldn't it be interesting for us to talk about it like in the present tense? Because me and my wife do have challenges and struggles, and I was like, maybe it would be helpful for folks in the here and now to have some window, some perspective on how we're trying to approach solutions, right, and resolutions. So just a thought. Something might come of that. We'll see. But the topic for today, I was like, how do you determine how do you know what kind of marriage you want to have, right? Is it based off of what you see online, right? What you're hearing in the content that you consume, what you hear and what you see? Is it based off of what you've seen growing up, whether in relationships in your own household, with neighbors, with community members at church, what you learned about them, all that sort of stuff? How do you come to find and determine what it is you want out of a relationship? What I have found, what I am speaking to, how I can speak so clearly to my wife about the things that I want. It's based off of, yes, all of this content that I've consumed, what I've learned by being in relationships about what works and what doesn't, what I've learned about myself, about how I function, and what I've had to learn about myself, about how I function in relationships and things that I need to improve or work on. I can speak so clearly about what state I want it to be in a future tense, because it's the image that I've cultivated. And hopefully it's the image that, and really it's the image that my wife and I have cultivated, that we've both put together, and that we're building out what this picture looks like. You know what I'm saying? And the process of coming together and doing something long term is by like just filling in all the details. It's like a Bob Ross painting. You feel me? Where you feel like you might have a foundation of something that's in there, and maybe you have a happy little accident, and instead of trying to work to get that to show back up, that little bush, maybe that bush is a tree. Maybe that bush becomes something completely different. Maybe it gets another layer of paint. Maybe the color changes, right? You have to keep in mind that you are doing this in combination with someone else, and that they have their own ideas about what it's supposed to look like. And so there's a certain amount of it that is intentional about getting on the same page. Let's have the same idea about what it looks like, right? If we both want to paint a picture, and I say I want it to be a forest landscape, and she says I want it to be a beach view, right, of the horizon, we are maybe far apart, unless the picture that we're painting combines those two things. That might be a little bit far-fetched. So where can we find space where we're actually on the same page, where we have the same things in mind? Okay, well, is there going to be, are there clouds in the sky? Or what does the scene make you feel, right? Like, what feelings come up when you're looking at the picture of our life in the future? And so maybe then we start naming and figuring out what things we want to incorporate, right? I'm doing it in using art as the connective tissue, right? The medium by which you paint this picture of your life. I'm using that as the example because I feel like it makes so much sense. And I'll be honest, there's times where it feels like my wife is trying to make her picture come to life, and it's not regarding or considering what picture I want or what we want, and vice versa, right? Or we're both kind of fighting to gain control of the paintbrush and the colors and and all this stuff. And what I feel like I remind my wife about is just the fact that we're in it together, and that we're doing it together, and that there are going to be happy little accidents that happen on the way. That there are going to be bumps and challenges that come along, right? Things that don't necessarily look perfect in the moment, but in the grand scheme of the whole painting, the whole picture, the whole thing that we're doing along the course of our life, along the course of our lives together, that it's all going to come together, right? It's all going to be beautiful. And that we just have to make sure we don't get caught up in this little accident, this thing that seems so imperfect in this moment, that we lose track of and we lose sight of what we want the greater picture to look like. And so I'm speaking to that right now because I had a conversation with my wife this morning following us being in some conflict and having trouble communicating or having trouble navigating, right, some of these challenges. And I again reminded my wife, we're on our way. There's not going to be a point in time where we figure out it's done, because you know what I'm saying? Like, the it's done is either accepting that it's incomplete and moving on to paint a new picture, right? Which is not something either one of us wants to do, is planning on doing. That's not happening, right? That's not acceptable to me. We've talked about what's acceptable and what's not in our relationship. Or it ends because one of us is not here anymore, right? And so the idea is that's gonna happen when we're ripe old age, hopefully. And so on the way, it's just the journey of putting the picture together, right? Of adding the little details, of navigating the happy little accidents, of changing the color, of having new ideas, of maybe changing a portion of the picture to include something, incorporate something that we hadn't considered before, right? But yeah, so I guess in that regard, I guess love, I guess intimate relationships, I guess marriage, I guess long-term relationships are an art form, right? Working together in this very specific type of way. And I guess I'll just say marriage, right? Because I'm trying to incorporate a bunch of stuff. Let's say marriage. Marriage is an art form. Yeah. And I don't mind getting my hands dirty as long as my wife is right here next to me, also covered in paint. That's it. So, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening to my perspective. Please let me know what your thoughts are. If you're struggling, if you have a similar situation, or if you, in reflecting and listening to what I've had to say, if it brought up some thoughts of your own, please let me know in the comments. Reach out to me. Find me on one of those social media sites that I'm using. There's a bunch of them, and let me hear what you have to say. So until next time, sa. Peace.